3 is Good Company, weekdays at 10:30.
The following program is a repeat of last night's Total News program.
Total News, 7 days a week on CKVR TV.
Stand by.
Good evening. Officials at Bata Shoes in Toronto are tight-lipped tonight. They're not talking about the kidnapping of one of their executives. The man was abducted in Bolivia over the weekend, and his captors are demanding a $1 million ransom. We have a report.
Bata's headquarters are located in Don Mills, but the privately owned company has subsidiaries around the world, in Africa, Europe, and Latin America. Its annual income is reported to totter around the $2 billion mark, which may be why the kidnappers have demanded $1 million in ransom for the return of Antonio Van Ness, the director of the Bata shoe outlet in Bolivia. Basil Baker, who speaks for the Toronto-owned company, refused to disclose more details, but he told CBC News that this is the most serious crisis in the company's history. The company refused to say whether the kidnappers' demands would be met, but he added they would not be pulling out of Bolivia or any other South American operation. Sheila Manise, CBC News, Toronto.
Yesterday, hundreds of store owners across Ontario broke the law. They opened on Boxing Day, a statutory holiday. Next year, they may be able to do the same thing, but without risk of legal action. Greg Lubianetsky explains.
In Ontario, stores cannot legally open on the traditional Boxing Day, the 26th of December, so many have their Boxing Day sales today.
There's enough people around, the stores seem busy enough, but there's nobody loaded down with packages. Maybe the bargains just aren't there.
Or it may be the thrill and magic of shopping on the day after Christmas just isn't there by the time the 27th of the month rolls around. Solicitor General George Taylor says it's time to review the Boxing Day closing laws.
This is one that's always under review, particularly when there is more breaching of it, as is taking place in metropolitan Toronto. You try to say, okay, what are we trying to do to assist society here?
In York Region, Man's TV and Stereo has been open every Boxing Day for 5 years. Every year they're convicted, pay the couple $100 in fines, and begin preparing for the next Boxing Day. Police in York Region say they'll charge Manns again this year, but Vice President Donald Mann says they won't likely get far in court.
This year, instead of being considered a retail outlet selling retail, what we did was we had a sign posted at our entrance store involving wholesale pricing only, that we're not retailing on Boxing Day, and we assigned numbers to all the people that walked in through the door as wholesale accounts of Man's TV and Stereo. And most of the people thought it quite keen, and we're prepared to bring several of them into court as they are wholesale dealers.
Could the laws change in time for next December 26th?
We have asked the Ontario Law Reform Commission if they would look at it again as they did in 1970 to see whether that's a feasibility. And if it's possible, then they can produce another 500-page report as they did then and see if we can make some changes.
At least the wheels of bureaucracy are grinding slowly into action. Greg Lubianetsky, Total News.
Durham Region, it has as much nuclear generating capacity as any other area in Canada, but it has few plans to deal with a nuclear accident, and that is according to the regional chairman. More in this report.
Durham Region is a 1,000-square-mile municipality to the east of Metro. It's home for the Pickering nuclear plant. In addition, by the 1990s, Canada's largest nuclear station will be operating at Darlington, just up the road. But the municipality's chairman says there has been no adequate funding to put an emergency plan into effect if a nuclear accident occurs.
We don't even have enough telephones lined up directly into various radio stations and TV stations in the urban area of Metro Toronto. I think we need direct lines into our hospitals, to our firemen, to our police, and also to the news media to inform the 40-some-odd thousand people that live within the vicinity that may be affected if something should happen once in 100 or 200 years.
Harima says the plans exist on paper to cope with a nuclear emergency, but there is no decision on who pays for the system.
Nobody wants to take responsibility for putting up the money, and I'm certainly sure that our taxpayers shouldn't be responsible for something that Ontario Hydro and the Ontario government decided should be in Pickering.
Harima wants to meet with Solicitor General George Taylor as soon as possible to straighten out the funding question, but he admits it would take at least a year to get the emergency system working if he got the money tomorrow. Bob Fisher, CBC News, Pickering.
This is the Christmas holidays. The kids are out of school and many of them are on the ski hills. This is the busiest time of year for the resorts, and as Kevin Frankish reports, many operators believe this entire season will be one of their best.
Even though it was a slow beginning because of the mild temperatures at the start of the season, things are looking brighter for the area ski operators. The Christmas holiday has been a profitable one.
The areas themselves are doing a lot more publicity, advertising here, and going to special events and getting involved with the general public more so than they ever have before.
We've promoted a little more this year, done a few more advertising, and weather's been going really good, and people are just on holidays and having fun.
Membership at Snow Valley is up 30% from last year. Over at Medonte, a success story that started with 140 members 3 years ago has exploded into 4,000 members. The reason?
It all started about a year ago when we had a tremendous snow season, and now with all this new fresh snow, people are getting enthused again and getting into the sport. You know, all the retail operations have been reporting tremendous sales of equipment. So people are back into the recreation and they want to ski, and you know, this is a lifetime sport.
Medonte has dubbed itself as the affordable skiing capital of the world, and ski operators such as Snow Valley are not complaining because the mountain is attracting skiers into the area. Skiers, they say, are visiting more than one hill. Kevin Frankish, Total News.
And finally tonight, we continue our year-end review with a look back at the past 12 months. Here is part 2 in that series, the summer of '84.
The summer of '84 and a provincial legislature is under siege. It's the first time anything like this has ever happened in Canada. An armed forces corporal walks into the Quebec National Assembly with a machine gun and starts shooting. 3 people are killed, 13 others injured. 5 hours later, the gunman finally surrenders. Closer to home, the Ministry of Health closes the Archeden nursing home and returns the property to owner Roy Bennett, but without a license to operate. The matter goes before the courts in the new year. In Barrie, workers at Radio Shack walk out on strike, and the company begins using outside help. 6 months later, the strike ends when the union executive, afraid workers might never get their jobs back, accepts the original contract offer. In the courts, a jury finds 21-year-old Lindley Charles MacArthur guilty of murdering Lee Marie De Palma. MacArthur is sentenced to life in prison. He's appealing. In June, focus remains on the courts. 31-year-old James Rogers is found guilty of murdering Alliston Milk Store clerk Karen Hunter. He's sentenced to life in prison, but is launching an appeal. And in Newmarket, a jury is unable to reach a verdict in another first-degree murder trial. Joseph Cicchini is charged with killing his pregnant wife. The case goes back to court January 7th. There's good news for the auto industry in June. Honda announces a new assembly plant for Alliston. AMC plans a new Brampton factory. And General Motors invests in an Oshawa truck plant. The province legislates an end to the longest-running annexation battle in Ontario's history, giving Barrie part of Vespra Township. Compensation for Vespra is still being negotiated. A Supreme Court ruling puts on hold Hydro's plans to build a multi-million-dollar power line from the Bruce nuclear plant to transformers in Essa Township. The plan is now under review. And the legacy of Pierre Elliott Trudeau ends when he speaks as Prime Minister for the last time at the Liberal Leadership Convention.
Our courage is strong, and our dreams for this beautiful country will never die.
2 days later, John Turner sweeps to victory and within a few weeks calls an election. In July, Barrie hosts the largest hot air balloon championships ever held in Canada. The high-flying weekend will return in '85. And Canadians continue to set records at the Summer Olympics. Our team brings home an unprecedented 44 medals, 10 of them gold. For the first time, mediation ends an environmental dispute in the long-running controversy over the Posey dump site.
The deal gives Perkinsfield a new water system and allows the dump to remain open 3 more years. In Elmvale, 20-year-old Gary Sibthorpe is charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder after a house fire claims the lives of 2 children and their elderly babysitter. His trial is expected in the new year. The tragedy foreshadows a month of violence. In Halliburton, a 48-hour standoff ends with 2 police officers and the gunman wounded. William Hall Crofts is charged with 2 counts of attempted murder. He is still in hospital. On August 19th, responding to an alarm at a Markham computer company, York Region Police Officer Douglas Tribling is shot 5 times. 2 days later, the 49-year-old father of 3 dies. His killer is still unknown. 2 days later, a young Peel Region police officer is stabbed to death in a senseless murder-suicide. In the next 3 months, 5 more police officers are killed while on duty in this country. The deaths trigger a call for a return of capital punishment. With the election only a week away, it becomes a popular issue. Tomorrow, 1984 draws to a close. September, October, November, and December. Still ahead, another one for the Leafs, and Bob is happy about that because they lost to his team. He'll also have his forecast right after this.
I'm being asked to choose between Miss Schwartz, who sings like an angel, and Miss Land, who looks like one.
Saturday nights at 7, become a part of the lives of the students and teachers of the High School of the Performing Arts on Fame.
He does have a way about him, doesn't he? Fireworks, baby. Fireworks! You betcha.
3 is music, dancing, and fun on Fame. Saturday nights at 7 on CKVR TV.
It's a 24-hour-a-day holiday on CKVR TV. From December 25th to January 6th, CKVR is your station for 24-hour entertainment, featuring great movies and your favorite classic television shows like The Twilight Zone.
And we are about to watch the metamorphosis of a twisted fanatic, poisoned by the gangrene of prejudice.
My Favorite Martian.
Just give me a second.